princes, and babes shall rule over them. And the people shall be oppressed, everyone by another, everyone by his neighbor. The child shall behave himself proudly against the ancients, and the base against the honorable. When a man shall take hold of his brother, of the house of his father. For behold, the Lord of hosts.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. Continuing the Gospel of Luke. We left off in the parable in chapter 20, where he talks about the husbandmen and the vineyard. And the husbandmen, that ear is not functioning again. It's gonna sounds like I'm underwater. All right. So the husbandmen have mistreated the messengers sent by the Lord of the vineyard. And of course, this is an image of God and sending his prophets, and how the people in charge generally don't want to receive things like prophets. We talked not very extensively. We talked somewhat extensively about this already. But then finally he sends his son, and he says, surely they'll reverence my son. But instead they see the son, and they think, here is the heir, we will destroy him, and then the vineyard will be ours. And they do this. Now, and, they do this, and then Jesus says, what do you suppose the Lord of the vineyard will do? And it's because it's funny. It's funny because they think this is actually a good. They think, hey, we'll kill him and then it'll be ours. You know what I mean? A lot of times you hear about really terrible crimes, and they're incredibly stupid. Like, stupid. Because sometimes, not being able to think properly can lead you to do things you shouldn't do. It can get you into situations where you end up taking actions probably not in your own best interest, even though at the time you may see a path forward that seems good, but isn't. And everyone can be stupid. Even smart people can be stupid. I'm certainly occasionally stupid. Meaning, stupid. We have a word, stupefy. And, there's low intelligence is an immutable characteristic very often. There's sometimes if we have low intelligence, there's nothing we can do about it. And I don't like calling people stupid. As far as he's a stupid person, he doesn't have enough intellect. The gospel is for everyone, from the greatest of us to the least. And so, that's why I don't like anyone who, because I was in a school, because we do wrestling tournaments and we go to schools, and it was a high school somewhere, and they had some door, and it was probably the room where particular clubs meet. And then it says, gay is not a synonym for stupid. Because that's how, I remember people be like, oh, that's gay. They mean it's stupid. And the people who are, who identify with that kind of, who think that word represents them. They've chosen that word to represent them. They don't like that it's used as a synonym for stupid. But how do the stupid people feel about having homosexuality used as a synonym for their condition? You know what I mean? I thought it was funny because they don't. I'm guessing at that high school, they probably have a lot more stupid kids than they do gay. And they're not considerate about how they feel. Because the worst thing in the world you can be is not intelligent. But that's not the same as stupid, really. Though people treat it as so. Because sometimes lack of intelligence will lead us to do stupid things. One of the most important things, if we lack intelligence, If we lack intelligence, and even if we think we're smart, a lot of times we think we're smart, and we're never as smart as we need to be. I know that, right? But you kind of have to have a certain level. Sometimes people who are really smart actually tend to understand and devalue their intelligence, and realizing, like, once you see, because intelligence allows you to see how big the problems really are sometimes, and realizing, I don't know how to fix any of this, you know? Whereas people who are simpler, let's call it that, a person whose mind works in a more simple fashion, isn't complicated with all kinds of junk. And sometimes I think that's a net positive, because sometimes your intelligence can get you all caught up in weeds and stuff, and in a sense you're being stupid because the answer is simple. A lot of my problem is sometimes I want to know why. How do you explain this? And as a teacher, it's important to know how to explain things, but sometimes people aren't even looking for explanations. But I'm looking for an explanation because I'm curious. And I have the intellect to see where there ought to be one, or to think I could find it. And so I can get into stupid problems. That's why sometimes in my Bible studies I'll say stupid things. I don't mean to, but I do. The idea of stupid means stupefied, right? Like stupefaction is something that happens to you when you drink. It means sort of having your senses clouded. And our lack of intellect can cloud our understanding, especially if we don't know that it might be happening. Meaning, if we're not aware of ourselves enough to recognize that, I'm not the smartest person, so maybe I don't get it. And that's being smart, even though you may not have intellect. It is smart to recognize when we need help, or when we need, or when we maybe should wait on a decision here. I've seen people of low intellect who are incredibly smart in their way. I mean, they don't figure things out necessarily, but they have other qualities which make them exhibit behaviors that are intelligent. Because all humans are intelligent, and if taught properly, even people who aren't good at calculating and figuring things out can live perfectly normal lives. And also, and I'm talking very low intelligence, but I mean, there's everyone isn't above average. Most people are average. That's just, of course, the most people are going to be average. That's why it's average, and then a significant portion of people are going to be below average, and other significant people are going to be above average, and then the people who are really smart, it's very few. But even smart and calculating people, when confronted with something that they're greedy for, or they're moved by, they call it hubris, but let's just call it pride, right? They think, hey, kill him and we'll take it. Kill him and we'll take it. And of course, standing outside the situation, they see, Jesus says, and we can see, like, well, this isn't going to go well. Killing the heir of the owner is not exactly a winning strategy. Certainly, it's more plausible in the old times, right? When you can just be on a piece of land and, well, it's yours. It's not like title deeds and the you go down to the courthouse and there's a record of who owns the property. Even so, in this day and age, I heard on the radio, there's such a thing as title theft. Titles can be stolen, and they steal your title, and they don't just move into your house. What they do is they borrow against it, and then they leave you with the mess. As far as I'm concerned, if someone does that, you should not be. It's the people who are controlling the title and people who are lending the money who are responsible for that. It's like you borrowed against, you loaned someone money who said they owned my house and they didn't. Why is that my concern? Because often they have your signature and all that, but it's like, I don't know. Anyways, It's not that hard to prove, actually, in a way that you had nothing to do with it. So, I mean, where did the money go? You know, the money didn't go into your bank account. They can trace that stuff with banking. Anyways, it's still a pain because, you know, all of a sudden you're getting in trouble. So, they think, yeah, we'll do that. And they do it. And Jesus says, well, he's going to come and destroy those husbandmen and give the vineyard to others. And I think another one, he says, who will return to him the fruit that he's owed. I mean, give it have others operate it for him. And when they heard it, they said, God forbid, because they understood. Which is unusual. This is an unusual parable in that sense, is that the people who were the subject of it, who were not Jesus' disciples, understand. They understand very well what it's all about. Or at least they suspect it. It says they perceive that he spoke of them. So it says, we already read that last time, but we're just recapping a bit. And he beheld them and said, this is then that is written. The stone which the builders rejected, the same has become the head of the corner. And that, I should know that. Whatever. I don't know. I don't remember which Old Testament prophet or psalm that's from. So, I'll just find out. I misspelled something. Probably stone, right? B-U-I-N. Oh, it's probably disallowed or something like that. Yeah, it's because the quotes aren't. Yeah, it's actually Psalm 118, verse 22. This is a problem sometimes when you want to look up an Old Testament verse by doing it by just typing in the New Testament reference. Because in Psalm, and I'll bring it up for you here. And where to go? There. Psalm 118:22. The stone which the builders refused is become the headstone of the corner. That may not be the only time that's referenced, actually. But this is the one. It's quoted a lot in the New Testament. This is the Lord's doing and is marvelous in our eyes. Now, that's also interesting too. And also, this is the day which the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad. That's one of the first hymns I remember. So, it's this concept that there's a certain ironic thing where, the people who are in charge say, no, not that one. But then that one that they think is the rejected thing becomes the headstone becomes the most important stone in the whole building. Or the most prominent, let's say. The cornerstone. We use the word cornerstone metaphorically to refer to something very important, right? So the cornerstone of my business is this, or I'll make it the cornerstone of da-da-da-da, or whatever. It is a cornerstone of all philosophical reasoning. I'm trying to bring up random subjects that's nothing leaps to mind. And Jesus represents that. It's a proverbial saying, because it represents a sort of an ironic thing that in life can happen. It's like sometimes the experts are wrong. Like terribly wrong, tragically wrong. It represents that the people who are in the know and are in responsible positions don't always get it right. This is why the problem of this is why I tend to be on the right side of politics and trending a bit libertarian, as always. I've always said that. Because top-down people who trust in expertise and will give it all into the hand of government, that's not a good idea. The more the government, because the government is not, and if it's a terrible place to put too much power and responsibility. Terrible. Because they are actually less responsible. You say, but wait a second, they got to be elected and stuff. It's like, so every business is elected. They hold elections every single day. Remember, election is just another word for select. And every time someone goes out and selects a product or a service, they're holding a little election. And you're voting with our currency. And they don't get resources if they don't provide services that people want and they can attract. They have to accomplish a lot to get there. Now, sometimes really big businesses cheat, and that's not good. And so, the government should play a part of like a referee. But you don't want the government responsible for things, like for supplying things, not many. Should be only things that like we decide that are that they, there's a certain level, because built into that there's going to be incompetence. And also, you're putting it into a hierarchical structure again. It's a lot like a religion. The bureaucratic state is a lot like a religious structure. You know what I mean? So it's no wonder that I have the same sort of view of politics as I do as a religion, as far as religious practice, that it should be decentralized. It should not be. That's why I'm not a Catholic. I don't think everyone in the Catholic faith has gone astray necessarily, but a central authority figure like the Pope is like, wait till we get there's probably a lot of everyone, when Pope John Paul was the Pope, a lot of people were happy with him. He's very conservative, old-fashioned. A lot of people hated him, though, because he was such a old-fashioned, like, hanging on to the way things were. The current Pope is, like, I remember I was listening on the radio, and he was talking about ordaining married men, which is, I don't have a problem with it at all, but the Catholic Church does, and some people think they shouldn't, right? And he talked about, people were talking about how they should do this. They want to do it for the Amazon, because in the Amazon, they have a great shortage of their priests. And because if they could ordain married men, though, there'd have more priests. Because the guys who don't want to be married are not going to be that many. It's a natural thing. And among those, you're going to have a high proportion of people who don't want to be married because they don't like women. And that's also a different kind of problem. All right? So you're going to select your religious leaders from a pool of people who are, okay, whatever. But like, the thing I'm saying is, he said, no, well, we're not going to ordain men now. It's not the right time. Which to me is like, come on. It's either right or wrong. There's not the right. We got to wait for the church to become more corrupt before we start changing things. It's not time, it's not time to ordain homosexuals. We'll do that later. I mean, it starts with, well, actually, they already do that, but not openly, okay? But I mean, saying that's what we think it's fine to do this, but now is not the time to change things, because it'd be unpopular. There's still too many people that hold on to the old ways. We'll wait till more of them are dead, then we'll change it. So it's like, so wait, is it right or is it wrong? You're just gonna wait till popular opinion changes? When Jesus said of John the Baptist, what went she out there for to see? A reed shaking in the wind? A man clothed in soft raiment? You go to the Vatican, you can see both in one man. A reed shaking with the wind, and clothed in soft raiment, dwelling in a king's house. All right? So I got nothing against general people or people who would like to go to Catholic church. I went to a Catholic funeral a couple of years ago, and I quite enjoyed the atmosphere. I mean, it was like, this is a very Christian environment. I was into it. And I even liked the priest there, whatever. But it's like, the hierarchy and entrenched power and interests will often get it wrong because they become blinded by their entrenched power and interest. Just like a man who's smart could be blinded. Like, I'm doing the right thing because I'm smart. Of course, I'm doing the right thing because I do the right things because I'm intelligent. I'm intelligent enough to know the right thing. So what I'm thinking must be the right thing because I'm thinking it. You know? And we become foolish in our conceit. The intelligent. And in powers, this works the same way. Except, it works the same way. And the nice thing about smart, if you're smart enough, you learn. You don't have to be. You don't even have to be smart. But power and the structure, if you aren't corrupt, well, just wait. You know what I mean? Just like he said, we'll change it later. Just wait. Pretty soon the whole thing will be corrupt. Don't worry. Don't worry. How do you think they got to the place where they're selling indulgences? I think the Catholic Church didn't start off selling indulgences, and they don't do it now. And they never will again, probably. But just wait long enough, and there's going to be some new corrupt thing creep its way in. And it's a structural problem. You want to build a structure, you're going to have a problem. The husband. But there have to be husbandmen, don't there? I mean, it's like... But here's the thing. In the church, he will give the vineyard to others. Not the same, and it doesn't have to be the same way. I mean, the parables aren't always one-to-one. It doesn't mean like now we have to become the Pharisees. In fact, I remember I always wondered, because in the New Testament it talks about the priesthood of all believers. Right? But from the Catholic perspective, at least I heard, and I could be wrong, someone chastised me once for not having it right, and you can chastise me again if they're listening at any point. But the priesthood is, from what I understand, I always wonder why we have priests, because the Bible in the New Testament doesn't mention priests, but that it was a continuation of the old priesthood, like of the Levitical priesthood, which in a sense of like, look at here, we got the vineyard, the priesthood is given to others. These were the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders of the people he's talking to, as you recall. Okay, it's an argument. I'm not going to say it's not a possible... I mean, certainly if that's their explanation, that's their explanation. I happen to disagree. But I don't think we need to recreate the structures which contributed to that. And you say, well, God created a structure from the beginning as far as when he ordained priests. He did bring about a priesthood in the beginning. Yeah. And he also gave a king. But it wasn't like all that stuff. It's like God didn't go to Adam, okay, we're going to have priests. That was so much later. And priests, it's like, to me, it's like things like divorce. It's like things like, what was the other thing? Well, because Jesus said of divorce, he granted this because of the hardness of your heart. And just like sacrifice. Sacrifice isn't because God needs blood, because he loves blood and he wants to drink it up or something. No, it's because our sin requires payment. And there's really nothing we can do to pay for it, but God has graciously accepted our sacrifices, or used to. In his grace and mercy, he would accept a sacrifice in place to pay in some way for our sin, as a reasonable substitute for something we can't pay. You know what I mean? Like, he would take that as a reasonable substitute, showing our good faith towards God, our conscience witnessing we have sinned, and therefore we give up something of value in payment for it. All right, that's the idea behind it. And Christ becomes that ultimate sacrifice, and then he doesn't even belong to us. He doesn't belong to us. So in a sense, the sacrifice offered buys us. We are bought with a price, it says. The price was Christ's blood, a very precious price indeed. And we become servants of God. We become his bondmen now. We are indebted to him. He has bought us back from the slaughter. And that's why it says, offer your bodies a living sacrifice acceptable to God. This is your reasonable service. Because that is our reasonable response, is to offer ourselves up. And I'm kind of a field here. But what I'm saying is, in Christianity, I think the Spirit now is, Christ is our high priest. You know what I mean? He is the high priest. We've gone back to the state like when Israel didn't have a king. God was their king. It didn't work out this time, but in a sense, it didn't work out. They demanded a king, and we went through all this stuff of having a king. And prior to that, give us a man to speak for God. You know, they didn't want to speak to God. They didn't want God to speak directly to them. So they asked, have Moses speak to us. There was no priesthood prior to this. There was no priesthood in the time of Abraham. There was no priesthood up until after the Exodus. And the priesthood was ordained because they did not want to speak to God themselves. They wanted some man to stand between them and God. And so they did all this, and this is what it ended up. The priests themselves crucifying the Son of God, the Messiah sent to save the people. Not the priests themselves, but I mean the priesthood complicit with the elders of the people and the religious authorities, all conspiring together to have him killed. That's how the priesthood worked out. And today, and it's not really much, today, I was going to say, they still metaphorically put him to death. As Jesus said, they have the keys to the door of knowledge or something like that, or they keep the door of knowledge or whatever. The idea is they sort of stand in the place, like if someone has a religious question, they generally go to someone who they think they can trust to have the answer. I'll go ask the priest. Go ask the priest, right? Why should I, as a layperson, open up my Bible and research some topic that, I'm not being facetious at all. Why should I just go into my Bible, okay, some complicated moral question, right? Complicated moral question. Why should I take all this time to research this when I have access to a man who I pay? I go every week to church, I pay him to know these things. You know what I mean? It makes sense. It's part of specialization, right? Everyone doesn't have to be an expert, but he's supposed to be an expert. So I can go to him and I can ask him this complicated moral question. I can ask it of him. So it makes sense why people would want to have people to be in that position, right? Nevertheless, you are responsible on some level for your own. You are responsible for assuring here's the thing. When you ask your priest or your pastor an important moral question or a religious question, and they don't give you a satisfactory answer, or I remember Arnold Murray, I used to have this video of him. He did a special where he read this newspaper article that was written by some reverend, not a priest, but a reverend of some denomination. And it was called "Sometimes It Pays to Obfuscate," meaning and it was a comedic sort of article. And he even read the name of the guy, which is funny because he always said he would never name people, but he named the guy in his TV broadcast, which was unusual. Only time I ever remember him doing it. And I do I need to disavow Murray? I have pages on my website dedicated to dismantling his teachings. Okay. But anyone who hasn't heard that from me, they can know that. Sometimes it pays to obfuscate. And in this article, this guy was talking about how, when asked a complicated moral question or a complicated biblical question that you don't know the answer to basically start talking about, Catherine of so-and-so, asked the same question of Bishop Longitude, I'm going to make stuff up, Bishop Longinus in the 1863. And in their conversation, it was in the time of blah, 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 in the capital of, and what he says is, you sort of start talking about, using a lot of religious flowery language, big words. And he said, you'll see their eyes glaze over, and they go, thanks, and walk away. Right? Meaning, sort of, don't give a satisfactory answer and we kind of say a bunch of rigmarole. You know what I mean? Obfuscate means to, well, it means basically to put someone in a stupor or to cloud the truth. You know what I mean? From men's minds. To sort of cloud their minds from seeing the truth. Meaning you kick up a lot of dust. Instead of giving an answer, a clear answer, you just kick up a lot of dust to distract them. And then here's what happens. You pay your pastor, your priest, your reverend to be the person who's supposed to be, you can rely on. You ask a complicated question or whatever, you go to them. They're the expert. Now, nobody hardly ever asks me any questions because nobody hardly listens, but people who are listening for answers in the teaching, which I'm thankful. I'm not anxious to have questions, by the way. I put it up there because it's like, I'm available, but I'm not anxious to have it. It's like doing the Bible study itself is, but if a question comes up, by all means ask. I know some people have said that the live comments don't work or something like that. Don't make comments there. Wait till the thing posts and then write your question. Because I don't even see the live thing. I don't even know where it's on the live page and whatever. And I don't monitor that. It's too much. I tried at the beginning. I even have like a questions and answers prefab thing made up like I do when I go on the internet or when I want to put up a different screen for you. I don't even think it works anymore because YouTube changed. When he doesn't give you an answer, that's a moment of judgment where you need to say, this guy isn't straight. He ain't straight. He didn't clarify my understanding. You know what I mean? Oh, that's a very difficult question, and always, blah, blah, blah. It's like you're supposed to have some sort of answer. And sometimes you got to have pity for these people because they send them to 4 years of college. They slap an ordination on them. Or I don't know, maybe it's 6 years. I don't know. How long does it take to get ordained as a pastor or a priest? I don't know. Not long enough for you to actually really know the answers. A lot of answers come from living life. I begin to feel like I'm just barely qualified. I have 3 adult children. I'm 46. I'm just coming to the ripeness of my life where, I've done a lot of teaching over the years. Not as much as I've done actually consistently over the past couple of years. But honestly, over the past couple of years, it's been a good time to start. Moving from like a weekly thing where I'm like sort of editing it and thinking hard about where I'm just getting up here and saying stuff. I'm just ripe enough to be over somebody's vineyard. You know what I mean? And I'm 46. These guys are in their 20s. And they're sticking them in places. It's no wonder when you ask them a question that actually, like an adult man in his 40s comes and asks a question of a 25-year-old about some conflict. He doesn't know. I mean, if it's a theological question, he might have an answer. Maybe. If it was something covered, Or maybe they took a semester on apologetics, And so like, yes, well, someone said to me something about some doctrine that's different than ours. Oh, well, my apologetics course. What? Okay, and then feeling their way through this, right? Here's the thing. If they can't give satisfactory answers, why you trust? Here's the thing. They'll give crummy answers, and people will let them get away with it because they trust the authority. Well, he's the ordained minister, and if he doesn't know, I guess there's no answer. They walk away disappointed. It's a travesty. It is. It's a travesty because you should be like, why do we put you in charge? Why do we put you in charge? The scriptures say, having ruled his own house well. I said, why are we putting a 20-year-old? I mean, it does say of Timothy, let no man despise your youth. He was like 40, from what I understand. Okay, that's what I heard somebody say. He's like, that when it said that, the guy was actually like 40. Because honestly, to a guy who's 70, I am young. You know what I mean? I've had people try to treat me like a young man. It's like, well, you're still kind of young. And because you've just sort of come along. At 40, honestly, when I was 20, I thought, I'm all grown up now. By the time I got to there, I'm like, well, I wasn't quite, but now I'm sort of, I think I'm kind of an adult. Then when I got to 40, I'm like, oh, I never was. I never was grown up entirely. Like fully matured. It's not just a question of being mature. It's a question of being experienced. Experience changes you. You need experience. Women should go have babies, raise children. It gives you experience. Raise them to adulthood. It'll make you better. It'll help your intellect shaped with experience. Raw intellect alone is not a great thing necessarily. I mean, it's not in and of itself very valuable. It's very valuable. I'm glad to have intellect. But it needs other things. You could just raw intellect is not enough. That's what I should say. It's not enough. It's a valuable thing, but it's not enough. We shouldn't let them get away with that. Or if someone doesn't have proper answers or gives some kind of answer, you don't have to agree with it. It may not be the best answer, but it should be something substantive. If they don't understand the problem, they should be able to lay it out, the problem better than you, at least, so you know what the problem is. It's like, well, that's a tough question because here, there, and here all this, and they should elucidate somehow. Illuminate, make more lucid, more elucidate is probably the opposite of obfuscate. I shouldn't use big words, but they should make it more clear instead of more muddy. Perfectly good metaphors. Make things clear. They should at least if they don't have an answer to the question, they should clarify the question so that you even see better what the question is. Because a lot of times people ask questions, they don't even really understand what they're asking. They understand the where they're going because they ask complicated questions. Like I said, I can make it more complicated than it probably is, but if I don't understand, that's the natural consequence of that. They don't have to be brilliant. They just have to be honest brokers of the truth. People who obfuscate and who don't give answers and who say, that's a complicated question. You sure do ask questions. We're going to have to with something with you and flirt. Or it's just, or say something, it's just religion. Don't get so serious. You're making your livelihood off religion. And you don't want people to take it serious? Yeah, okay, then maybe people should pull the plug on your little operation there. If someone who's not even being paid for his work can do a better job than you, then maybe you're not worth your pay. I said, there are pastors who are worth paying, I'm sure there are plenty of good guys out there and gals, I guess. They say, why do you say that, Paul? Well, because, like I said, my wife asked me once if I would think it okay if we had a woman president. And I'm like, in principle, no, I don't think it's wrong. It's not like there's anything wrong with it. It's fine. But I would think there was something wrong in that there was no man who could step up and be the president. Like we had to resort to that. And Paul, why? That's a terrible thing to say. It's like, you understand. Men and women are of about the same average intelligence. We're about equal on average. But the shape of the curve for women for intelligence is this. There's a lot of women in the middle like that, as far as average intelligence. And men, our curve looks more like this. It's more like wider. Meaning at the middle, it's like we're about the same average intelligence. But at the edges, that's why the super geniuses are all guys. They're all guys. And not that genius necessarily means you should be president or a leader, all right? But in a lot of things, fighter pilots, most of them are men. Women can do it, but they're going to be really exceptional. And if a woman was president, she'd have to be really exceptional. And it also would be disappointing that we couldn't come up with a man. I would say to me, where have our men fallen? And our men have fallen and failed in many ways. So it wouldn't be surprising me if we ended up with a woman president because the men have become so pathetic. That's the thing. It's no slam against women. It's just whatever. It is what it is. And our most alpha leaders and stuff, I would expect more men to crop up there. Even if women shouldn't be disallowed. By all means, if the most smartest person in a woman could be a woman, but it's most likely not going to be a woman, just by statistical probability. It's just not. And also, there are many more men of ultra low intelligence. It's not sexist. It's just reality. It's not anything to get all worked up about. Most of us are down in the middle anyways, and we got nothing. We're not Albert Einstein, and but like, if you take all the most brilliant people in the world, there'll be a majority of men. There'll be some really brilliant women up there too, but it's not going to be 50-50 up at the top. No way. Won't be. Just not going to be. All right, so anyways, I'm going to turn it. I've gone 42 minutes and just recapping. Well, I don't know. Religion, because it's an important thing, because this is what leads to Christ's crucifixion. And why replicate the errors of the past? Christ is our high priest, the Holy Spirit. We're all priests through him. He is our high priest. Like Luther, one of the things he discovered was the priesthood of all believers. Obviously, Catholics don't believe in that. Or maybe they do. I don't know. Maybe they do, but that's spiritually. And of course, it's not the same. It's not the same thing as the earthly. But the point is, the reason I was talking about when you ask why you want a specialist, right? You want a specialist to be able to answer your questions. You don't necessarily, to be a Christian, you don't have to be me. You don't have to be a teacher. That's just one gift. You don't have to be able to answer every question. But you're responsible that if, like the person you're listening to, you ask them a question and they are like, blah, 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 why are you supporting this person? That should be his last, that should be like, well, you not just can't answer, but it doesn't take it seriously. You know what I mean? Doesn't take it, doesn't give it the proper, acts as if they're important. Their position is what's important. If they rely on their authority as a person in charge, because a lot of times they rely more on their authority than their actual skill in the things of God. Now, here's the thing. I don't know everything for sure, but it's like I'm very skillful in a conversation. Give me anybody. I'll give them a run for their money. And I'm not a professional. You know what I mean? I could have a conversation with anybody about it, and they will be put through their paces. Because me too, but I'm like an athlete who's always running. You know what I mean? I'm always running, so it's like my cardio is all built up. You want to have a marathon discussion? You will grow weary before me, because I do it all the time. And I'm speaking towards religious authorities who rely on their authority. Authorities can be wrong about religious things. And if they are not taking it seriously and being responsible and relying more on their authority to maintain their position than on genuine, like, wow, our pastor's great. He counsels married couples. He is ready with answers. He's just such an asset to us in every way. Such a professional. Because he ought to be a professional, because he does it for a living. He ought to be great at it. He ought to be helping people's spiritual life, lift them up. He ought to be lifting up their lives, helping them become better Christians, teaching them good things, answering their questions, tackling difficult subjects, subjecting himself to their judgment, not being all touchy about his position and all fearful about his authority, or relying on that to sort of get people to like, well, I answered, I'm the pastor, please go away, or you know what? That's a great question. Let me get back to you on that. We'll talk about that some other time. Sometimes it's got to be. Sometimes you need time. I have questions that I haven't answered. Because it's like I get piled on them. Old questions, mostly about Arnold Murray, and I get sick of it. All right, I've answered a lot of questions about that. Question about a specific teacher. Do I really? It's like, what do you like? Somebody asked me, what do you think about Joe Blow, the preacher from down low? All right, I'm obviously making that up. Meaning someone I never heard of. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to give you much of an answer right then and there. It's like, I've never heard of this person. I don't know what they teach. Even if you tell me what for me to commit based on someone else's information, I need to actually research this. That's different. If it's a question that someone, like I said, nobody's paying me, so I'm not obligated to know anything. You know what I mean? I haven't laid claim to any kind of authority over anybody in this. Except like I said, in this actually, yes. But I mean, like, let's say somebody wants me to counsel them for marriage. I'm not obligated. I'm not obligated. I mean, what I mean is, for the sake of men, I don't even have to be here doing this. I don't even have to show up in the morning. I could just not schedule a study tomorrow and not schedule a study ever again. And nobody is going to be like, well, you know what I mean? What I'm saying is that, and I'm not saying that to boost myself. I'm saying that because people in positions of power and authority need to be answerable. And we need to hold them to account. Or if you're part of it, you ought to. You know, it's like, I don't need to because I don't have a pastor. I've had pastors. And I tried to hold them to account, and they refused. And they got touchy about it. Didn't like to be questioned, even in private. Even when it was, it's not like I went up in front of everybody and started questioning their authority or something like that. I wasn't even questioning their authority. I just had a biblical question. It's like, well, I think that's wrong. I think there's a problem. And they got angry with me. Whoever shall fall upon the stone shall be broken, but on whomsoever it shall fall, it will grind him to powder. It's funny, we're only going to the second half of this parable today. And that's fine. I'm not in a rush. Someone told me they liked my pace, so that's good. Yeah, that's good. Because, it's not like there aren't valuable things to say, right? You have things of value to say. This is what leads men to crucify. Because here's the thing. Here's why everything I'm saying is so important. And it doesn't matter that it's only tangentially related to what we're talking about. The men of Jesus' day said, if we had been in the days of our father, we would not have partaken with them in the blood of the prophets. And don't we think like, oh, well, if I was in the time of Jesus, not only would I not be among those yelling, crucify him, but I mean, I wouldn't have denied him like Peter. I wouldn't have done this. I wouldn't have been like Thomas saying, unless I stick my fingers in there, I won't believe. We want to think, and you know what? I don't want to be walking on the water with Jesus and doubting it. But I already know, when I'm like, let's say I get in a spot of financial trouble and I start worrying about it. I realize, I'm walking on I'm okay now. I'm sinking into financial trouble. I gotta believe that whatever happens, it's not that I'm thinking about money necessarily. That whatever happens to me, if I were to lose my home at some point or whatever, that everything would be, that I would trust that I'm actually still head above water, walking I'm alive, I'm serving the Lord, and all things are working together for good for me. You know what I mean? To know that I am on the surface of the water. I am not sinking by any means. That my life is under control. My life is heading in the right direction. Because God is over it. He is Lord of my life. And I'm the vineyard and he is Lord of it. And he is running me directly. The one who is running the vineyard now, in my opinion, is the Holy Spirit. He's running it. And he has his several servants, obviously. And they also do work, right? But we all have access to that. And you don't have to be an expert necessarily. Things are so decentralized now. It's like you don't need it. We all need some sort of fellowship and stuff. Don't forsake the gathering together. That can be taken care of by other means. All right, so whoever falls upon the stone shall be broken. I think of that, I guess, I think of it in terms of two things. There's two ways to look at it. I sort of look at it like sort of Do I want to look at it that way? Well, the primary way I think is the right way. Let's say the right way of thinking about this, that I think is the right way. Falling over it like a stumbling stone. Because it is a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense. That's a. He is also called. In fact, the stone which the builders rejected has become the head of the corner. I want to, let's see. I want to try stone stumbling. I'm just looking up in my. Yeah, I thought there was an Isaiah 8. Original Psalm 118, but also Isaiah 8:14. Yeah, you know what it is? The verses do come together. Remember Psalm 118, how we looked at that, and it said, the stone which the builders rejected. And I've only been looking in the Old Testament here. But here's Isaiah 8:14. 13, sanctify the Lord of hosts himself, let him be your fear, let him be your dread. And he shall be for a sanctuary, but for a stone of stumbling and for a rock of offense to both the house of Israel, for a gin and for a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And many among them shall stumble and fall and be broken and snared and be taken. I have a song for that, one of my favorites. Well, let's say I look that same phrase up, and I'll include the New Testament this time. See, I'm only looking at the Old. And this is an old piece of software. I like it for searching. It's got certain simple functions. I'm sure you can get the same thing out of other things. If I look at the New Testament verses, stone of stumbling. I think it's 1 Peter, where he combines both things. Because you see, stumbling stone is mentioned 2 or 3 times in the New Testament, and 2:8, and a stone stumbling and a rock of offense. Unto you therefore which believe, he is precious, but unto them which are disobedient, the stone which the builders disallowed, the same has become the head of the corner. And like I said, that itself is that Psalm 118 is quoted several times in the New Testament. We're not going to look up every occurrence. But it's also, both are here. And Jesus is alluding to this concept also when he talks about whoever shall fall on this stone. Now, I was sort of considering saying, like, falling on it in terms of, like, falling at the feet of Jesus to forgiveness and being, sort of being broken in a metaphorical sense. Because, I came to save that which was lost. I came to heal that which was sick. I came to mend that which was broken. It's one of the metaphors of Christ's ministry. It's to take that which is broken and fix it. But I think in this context, it does not mean that. It does not mean, in this context, I think. It could, though. It could be like that there's hope for, it could, it's what it's saying is, it's much worse. Stumbling at Christ is bad, but having him fall on you is worse. And so, what does that mean? What does it mean for him to fall? Well, how will he fall on us as opposed to us fall on him? Well, they stumbled at the stumbling stone, that he was a stumbling stone to them because he was not what they expected in some ways. But their expectation had been colored by their own sense of entitlement and self-importance and their authority as, we are the religious leaders and we have all the authority and blah, blah. And so they stumbled at Christ. Because on one hand, just like with John, the prophet comes and rebukes the things he sees wrong, and judgment starts at the house of God. Of course, if he's going to have bad things to say, he's going to say the bad things first about people who are in charge. But they themselves thought, we are righteous. They looked at the Old Testament and the prophets and the things that were going on. It's like, we don't worship Baal. We don't we don't commit adultery. We divorce our wives like righteous men. We don't steal. Whatever we do as far as business, that's justified and it's fair and square and it's according to the law. It's all legal. They got caught up in legalism. Because there's a sense like you do things maybe that are embarrassing you wouldn't want people to know. Like people, like let's say someone has a problem with masturbation. They don't want to talk about that. That's embarrassing, right? They don't want to talk about it. But it's not illegal. I remember someone, like, in my state, they've legalized pot. But I'm not going to start smoking it again because it wasn't, the reason I stopped doing it in the first place wasn't because it was illegal. But I remember there were people who were like, well, it's illegal. And I wonder does that mean, no, now that it's legal, it's fine? Like alcohol's legal, we all know it causes a lot of problems. It's not a good idea, right? Legal is not justified. It doesn't justify what we do. But they had fallen into that trap of thinking that which is, if we do not violate the law, we're righteous. And these people who were clear violators of the law, prostitutes, sinners, publicans, right? Drunkards, whatever. They were clearly violating the things that the scriptures say, right? They were clearly in violation, and so they would say, well, yeah, those people are in violation, but we're not. And then Jesus comes along, and he's offering forgiveness and rebuking them, the religious authorities. And so the combination of his being kind to people they thought were clear sinners and being harsh towards themselves who they saw as righteous, that dynamic caused them to stumble. And don't think you can't also stumble. You know what I mean? We can be prejudiced against the truth by falling too much in love with our own ideas. You know what I mean? Like, I remember there were a lot of, doctrinally speaking, there were a lot of things for years I didn't believe they were correct, or I believed that were incorrect. I believed incorrect things. And it took time for me, sometimes it takes a while to amass enough evidence to overcome your pride. Because in accepting a doctrine, we often then, there's this, like when you believe something is true, and you accept it in yourself, like you become vulnerable. We receive Jesus as Lord and Savior. It's like there's this vulnerability where we say, okay, now we subject ourselves to the dominion of this Christ, or to the dominion of this word, this truth. And it comes in and it takes us over in a sense. We become possessed with the thought that this is correct, or this is the right way, or he is our Lord. And overcoming that, once you let that in, you've become vulnerable. There's a certain amount of once you come to that state of believing something, it can take more, it takes more energy to dislodge beliefs that are firmly held than it does to instill beliefs that are sort of coming in new. Meaning, I'm not saying a disbelief, like someone who doesn't believe in Jesus, who knows about Jesus, it's very difficult to convince them of Jesus because they already have a thought about it. They already have an opinion about it. And to change someone's mind when they've made up their mind about a doctrine, like let's say someone has no opinion about a doctrine, but they just kind of think one way. That's one thing. That was me when I was 19. I believed certain things, but I was ripe to be convinced of other things because I didn't have any knowledge that backed it up. I had just accepted things as true because they were what was told me as I was raised. And so you become vulnerable. When we open ourselves up to that, but as we become old, you become hard. And it becomes harder to change. And that's how they stumbled. When it talks about him falling on them, grinding them to powder, that is talking about like in his return. That's specifically of it when he comes back. Meaning, and not just that. Not just that. It's like stumbling at Christ breaks you. You're broken. You know what I mean? There's a failure there. And there's still hope though. You know what I mean? There's still hope when they've fallen you can stumble at Christ and there's hope. Like all the Pharisees that didn't believe, there was still hope. They could maybe see him, maybe in his resurrection they'd believe and whatever, right? We may stumble at Christ, we may stumble at things, and when we stumble and fall and are broken, there's still hope that we could be mended and turn to Christ. But when after they rejected him, then they rejected his apostles that came after, when the gospel was preached after the resurrection. And you know what? Within a generation of all that happening, basically about 40 years after Jesus rose from the dead, Jerusalem was sacked, destroyed. Their temple was destroyed. And it's gone. It's not there anymore. That's when it happened. It's like the temple was rebuilt hundreds of years, centuries previous, in the time of Nehemiah. Almost 500 years before Jesus. 500, our nation hasn't even existed that long. You know what I mean? Think about the way we hold in reverence our national monuments and stuff that are only centuries old at the most. A couple. That temple stood for by the time it was destroyed, it had stood for half a millennia. And it's the second temple. It stood, just about every bit as long as the first one. In fact, maybe longer. This is an ancient temple in Jesus' time. You know what I'm saying? It's like when Messiah came, it was like he came, he went, and it got destroyed. And he took away their He took it away. He took away their place. He took away the vineyard and gave it to others. And when the judgment of God falls, it's not good. That's why while we have chance to turn to God, we ought to do so. When we stumble, we ought to realize, I just stumbled. I got hit. There's something wrong. I've run out of time. But this is an open threat. If whoever will stumble at the stone shall be broken, but on whoever shall fall, it will grind him to powder. They were afraid of the people. They knew the parable was spoken against them. I don't know if he actually means the first one or actually the second one about the stone. It will grind them to powder. It was a threat. It was a threat. Whoever stumbles over me will be broken, but on whom I fall, whoever falls on me, that's the idea of stumbling. You have to say fall. Whoever falls on me will be broken, but on whoever I fall will be ground to powder. That's how they steal Jesus away from you too. Like I said, it's like they still kill him in metaphorical sense, because the truly, like the Jesus threatening people with such. We know, but on some level they still want to portray Jesus like some happy hippie. I don't know why. Have you ever seen? Just because he was kind to people. That's the thing, is you're a little nice. I told my wife the other day, I was like, she's like, I want people to, she likes people to know that I'm nice, right? Wants people to have a good opinion of me. I'm like, I find, and I told her, and she understood, of course, but I find that if I'm nice, they think I'm weak. That's they think you're weak. and I'm not saying be mean or not or unkind, but I would if they're going to misunderstand me, I'd rather have them just think I was a jerk. You know what I mean? Because at least then they're thinking I'm strong, and they won't. Sometimes when they think you're weak, they do foolish things. I'd rather be feared than thought of as some happy hippie. And it's good for them too. You know what I mean? It's good for people to don't think of Jesus as the happy hippie. Your pal Jesus. You know, I ever see that one statue of Jesus where he's got his thumb up? It was from I forgot which movie it was from. It had George Carlin. It was Buddy Christ. He was playing a priest and he was unveiling Buddy Christ. And he was like giving the thumbs up and winking, and you know, it was satire. Because that's how people try to make him out. He ain't your buddy. Right? Lord, not whatever. I was trying to come not lad or not your pal. He's your Lord, not your pal. I remember someone made a thing like that. Whatever. Anyways, thanks for joining me in this study. We will just pick up at verse 20 tomorrow. And we'll consider that thoroughly covered. I don't think I need to say anything more. I could say more, but we just won't, okay? And I got... Here we go.
Say ye to the righteous that it shall be well with him, for they shall eat the fruit of their doings. Woe unto the wicked, it shall be ill with him, for the reward of his hands shall be given him. As for my people, the children are their oppressors.